gonna go. Top Lobster Productions.
We are being hypnotized by people like this. Newsreaders, politicians, teachers, lecturers. We are in a country and in a world that is being run by unbelievably sick people. The chasm between what we're told is going on and what is really going on is absolutely enormous.
Oh yeah, dude. There's some Nephilim shit.
It's like we all know what's going down, but no one's saying shit what happened to the home of the brave. These motherfuckers, they controlling us now, and no one's talking about how they made us fight and be slaves. And everybody's just walking around, head in the clouds, and won't awaken to a dead in the grave. By then it's too late, we need to be ready to raise up. Welcome to the end of days.
Everybody is slaves, only some are aware that the government releasing poison in the air.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Nephilim Death Squad. I am David Lee Corbo, a.k.a. The Raven. That is Top Lobster, the father of disinformation. Before we get into today's guest, I would like to remind you guys that this entire episode is going to stream for free. But in case you were wondering where you can go to support the show, in the meantime, you can go to patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad. Sign up for whatever tier you'd like, enjoy an ad-free viewing experience, and gain early access to the episodes before the general public does. You will find that there is a ton of backlogged content on Patreon, and you can watch it for free. Also, guys, consider going over to toplobster.com and checking out our merchandise. We just dropped this super dope NDS varsity jacket, and those things are moving. You can check that out while you're there, as well as a bunch of other designs, MK Ultra Dolphin, Dangerous Retards merch, even what would you call it? Workwear, professional wear, NDS professional wear, all that and more.
Epstein's back in the news. We almost forgot, but I don't want to talk about that today.
Yeah. We're not.
We had a long
Epstein.
Yeah, we had a long conversation with Ed. We're saying, like, we're done with this stuff. We're talking about the Book of Genesis. I'm very excited to get back into it. Ed, what's up, man?
Hey, how you guys doing? I dig the new video intro.
I saw you laugh at the egg. Yeah, that was
my favorite part. But I love you guys brought a lot of good contemporary stuff with the Trump and Elon doing that. It looked good. Good job.
I forgot that we had that animation of me as a Birdman birthing an egg, and then we got that so long ago. And then if you look at the evolution of I guess our talking points and how integral the egg has become, it's kind of funny that we had that animation. But before we get into the Book of Genesis series, because Fridays are definitively for the Lord now, we're co-opting Fridays, we're bringing it to the Lord, but we got a little bit of business to go through. Ed, where can people find your work and support you?
Yeah, so my legacy site is faithbyreason.net. That's where all the stuff I've been working on for years and years. There's blogs, podcasts, videos. And I will say right now, if you are interested, go get as much stuff as you can as possible, because I'm going to make some changes and I'm going to start rearranging some things, which means some of my content's going to start coming down, and I'm going to start putting it in different formats that people can digest differently, because there's just like so much stuff up here. It's really hard to navigate. So I want to make sure that my readers, my listeners are able to just get what they need quickly, and instead of this unorganized mess. So if there's something you want to grab it now, because it's soon going to be going down and there'll be different ways to access it. Other way, with my preferred way right now to interact with me is through Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/faithbyreason, that is the vibrant community that's been building since early this year. Started in January. It's really grown. I appreciate all you guys who become Patreons. And so as Patreons, there's two levels. That's the first level. You get access to all my stuff that I'm posting as soon as I post it. It goes to Patreon before it goes to any of the free stuff, free feeds, or even my own website. And I'm going to be dropping the next video for the Genesis series. I just finished editing it last night. I need to make a thumbnail for it, and then it's going up for Patreons only. Then you have to wait. If you want the free feed, you got to wait a couple weeks. You also get Q&As. I'm putting up a new Q&A today where I'm answering questions about the temple, about the three temples, as well as whether or not Christians are obliged to work to obey the Sabbath and tithe. Those huge questions. So you get that in bonus content. And
those will get you in trouble, Ed. The tithing one. That's a.
Oh, I know it is. That's why that's why I do this, so I can get in trouble. But you know what?
I am in the business of ruffling feathers.
Right. You know what? If you want to, that's my niche. My niche is like, stuff has to make sense. And I'm not going to get all behind I'm not getting with all the dogma and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, does this make sense? I don't care what the local church says or what this group says. Does it make sense? Is it in the Bible? And should we be doing it? And well, you'll see my answer on the Q&A today. And so if you want to take it a level up, then you can join my next tier, and you get everything with the lower tier, but you also get access to the monthly Bible study, where we go through the entire Bible in 12 months, once a month on the third Sunday. Actually, it's coming up in a couple of weeks, where we look at the entire Bible through the supernatural point of view, through the spiritual aspect. We're looking behind the curtain at what's really going on, because it's not our story. The Bible's God's story. And the whole purpose of it is to help you in your walk with God. And the way you can be helped in that walk, the most effective way to have a relationship with God is to know who he is and to know what he wants from us. And that's really what it's all about, is helping you just better your walk with God.
I love that.
I definitely we did.
Go ahead, Tom.
Sorry, Davey. I think there's a little bit of a delay on your end, but that's fine. We did the first Bible study, and it's kind of it's what we've been doing on the show on NDS. So it's just like more of that, but in more of a specific way. And that specific way of looking at the Bible has definitely helped me a lot as somebody who, especially the Old Testament. You look. Yeah. I used to look at it and be like, "This is boring. Like these thous, this one begot that." And like, so what? But once you start looking at it from a different perspective, which Ed is teaching, it's like it actually makes it matter. So, yeah.
And to the Nether Knight's point, it's not. We're not going to be interrupting Ed. So yeah, he might actually be able to get a thought across without us derailing him
mics.
one way or another. Yeah, you'll have to mute our mics. Also, I love that idea of that Q&A and trying to figure out what makes sense within the church or how you worship, because obviously we have this habit of playing a game of telephone. You know, it starts off as one thing, and then throughout history, we kind of misconstrued these traditions or these rituals or ceremonies, and we kind of add our own baggage to it. Next thing you know, you don't know what is actually called upon us to do and what is just something that people made a habit of doing. We have a real nasty way of doing that, and so that's a great tool. And I just want to say that before we get into it, that's really how I look at Faith by Reason, is you're giving people a bunch of different tools in order to kind of, make decisions on their own, or at least think critically about what it is that the Bible is calling us to do, or what it is that the Bible is actually saying. And so it's a great tool, and I highly recommend people go and check that out.
Yeah, a lot of the traditions that have just been burned into our brains, a lot of them are just like you said. We're doing it because other people do it. We're playing the telephone game. But then there's also sometimes there's an agenda behind it. And always, I mean, we're all truth seekers here, and so I look at the truth, like who's benefiting from the tithe, who's benefiting from Sabbath, what's their agenda, and there are agendas behind it. And again, some of them are innocent. They're just, hey, we're just doing it because we're doing it. But other people say, hey, you know what, I'm the old movie JFK. That was a great scene with Donald Sutherland and Kevin Costner, where Sutherland is saying, when you're looking into this, you have to ask the questions, who has the power to do it, and basically who's benefiting from it, and who can cover it up. Those are just basic questions you should always ask.
I want to address this real quick. Nancy says, can you ask Ed about the connection between the Catholic Church and the Synagogue of Satan? The only reason I'm going to say no is because we just swore before this episode started that we weren't going to talk about the Jews. If you want Jew talk, you got to go and catch yesterday's episode of Dangerous Retards with myself,
literally,
Top, and Clint.
The entire Bible is about the Jews, though, David. So we're gonna...
that is true. Yeah, I guess there's no real way of avoiding it.
Or you can or you can go to Faith by Reason. I talk about it there in the Revelation series. I touch on that and Catholicism. You will have to go to Rumble to get the part about the Khazarian stuff, because I had to take that down off YouTube because they gave me a warning.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Man, at least that has a lot more.
It got demonetized, and then they said, this is, you might want to re-edit this. I'm just putting it on Rumble. Forget you guys. So you have to go to Rumble.
You might want to re-edit this. You might want to lie to the people. All right.
Yeah. Did they mention specifically what the violation was?
It was generic. I don't recall. It was something like it wasn't hate speech. It was something along those lines of like sensitivity, or I forget exactly what they
unfounded conspiracy, things like that.
Yeah,
okay.
Or, they said they were going to put a context box around it or something.
Yeah. Like, hey, put your context box around it and then leave me alone. How about that?
I don't want to talk about it again, but we kind of have to. It's like the thing with the Epstein thing and Ian Carroll. What's coming up on Twitter all day now is people saying like, anti-Semitic, but like they're like screaming at this guy saying that he's this and that. But I'm like, no one's denying the claim. No one's denying what he
Nobody's saying,
said.
yeah, nobody's calling anybody a liar. They're just saying, how dare you talk
Yeah,
about this
like you're a bad person. But I'm like, oh God, like this is not a good look, guys. Is he lying?
Not a
Please, if
good
he's
look.
lying, debunk him. But
Yeah.
nothing so far.
Yeah, calling names is not. I mean, that's the dog that got hit someone that barks. So
Ed, real quick, what is your Rumble? 713 Rob is asking, and I think it's a good.
I think you just. I'll get it for you before the end of the show. I know if you just search by Faith, it's just Faith by Reason. I mean,
yeah,
I think
Top's already on it. I could see his gears churning in his head. But I
mean,
do believe it is
YouTube
Faith by Reason.
It's at Faith by Reason 883 for some reason, but I think in Rumble it's just Faith by Reason.
We're working on Ed getting I don't even follow you in Rumble. We're working on you getting a link tree, so that way we can just put your link tree and all your stuff will be there. That's going to be the way to do it. Yeah, I'm
going to work on that this weekend. Get that going. But yeah, one last thing. I know we will get into Genesis. I promise. Yeah, there's the Rumble, so you can find it there.
There you go. Faith by Reason. The Faith by Reason. There it is.
And I'm working on doing some ebooks. So I'm just going to take some of the popular subjects, and some folks have been asking for it in more condensed form instead of having to rummage through my website to find it. Here it is in an ebook, and it'll either be, depending on the length of the books, because I'm going to do several. They'll either be at no cost to Patreons, or they'll be at a discount for Patreons, and then everyone knows.
I think it would be pretty cool to have physical books as well, and I can walk you through when the time is ready how to do that. You can do that through Amazon. I've already designed for a couple of people who have done that. But yeah, a couple of books right here that say Ed Mabrie on it would be pretty dope. So
I'd be down for that. Yeah, let's talk about that offline. I'd love to, because I thought about that as well. I didn't know what the process was. But I mean, ebooks are easy, but doing it, having a hard copy of some of this, maybe
it's
the
doable.
Whole Revelation series.
Yeah,
that would be voluminous. Nobody's going to read all that.
Well, just on the topic of how it's a great tool, what you're offering right now, given all the conversation around spirituality, around God, around Christianity. I don't know if it's just from my own point of view, because I'm kind of biased. I'm in this content creating sphere, but it feels very much to me like something akin to a resurgence is happening. And if you don't want to call it a resurgence, you can certainly say that the spiritual realm has piqued people's interests. And in a time where everybody is now entertaining these ideas, right? We're talking about Ian Carroll is bringing up the Epstein thing, and Tucker Carlson's talking about the Nephilim and everything. It's a wild time. People could use these resources. So whether it's an ebook or a website.
And I'll run this by real quick. I was going to talk to you guys about this offline, but as long as you have the audience, I'm just going to put this out there, because I had this idea this morning that I get a lot of questions, and I know that we have very short attention spans. It's just how things are. I mean, so some people don't have time to read a whole book. They want some of the basics. So I was thinking of just maybe, in addition to doing full ebooks that are 5, 6, 7 chapters, maybe just like quick sheets, like 5 minutes, like understand salvation in 5 minutes. Understand original sin in 5 minutes. So just be like a quick couple pages, for very low cost, but you can just go through that and understand the basics. And if you want to take a deeper dive, you can go into the deeper stuff. But I think I get lots of questions like, what's the best Bible to use? What do you? I can
the Schofield Bible, obviously.
Yeah. What we need to start doing is, how the Watchtower Society and the JWs, they release like a magazine that has some topical whatever. We got to start releasing like a Faith by Reason /NDS physical magazine, a short magazine, and it's got some topics in there.
We have a name already. It would be Retards Digest.
Retards Digest is a banger.
They're working on that. Yeah.
You're going to make that one guy really mad who keeps,
Retard Finder. Yeah, there's a Retard Finder on X, and I'm like, that's not a bad thing. I don't know why he's calling all of my least favorite people retards. I'm like, you need to find my favorite people, the people that I like, and call them retards, because we're taking it back. We're taking the power back in the word retard. It's now a good thing.
So people are listening right now. If you think that's a good idea, like the little, understand X in 5 minutes or something like that, let me know, and I'll start producing some of those.
That would be very cool.
Go ahead, Raven.
Well, I was just going to say, I was going to pass the ball to you and say, where are we starting today in regards to the 3rd episode of our book of Genesis exploration?
Yeah, let's actually get into that. So last time I ended like I was halfway through talking about angels and the Elohim and what they are, but I realized that I want to take a step back, because one of the reasons we're doing this, I'm doing the full Genesis series, step by step, in the full depth. And one of the things we talked about doing with this show was, just kind of riffing on some stuff and doing some philosophical talk and helping me refine certain things.
Yes.
And so I want to talk before I want to finish up the angels, because we were talking to talk about the angelic civilization and the hierarchy and the different types of the angels and things like that. I want to go back and talk a little bit more about God philosophically. Like, what is God? I mean, and not being vague about it. Because faith by reason, I don't do platitudes. I don't do, he's just this great thing that's bigger than us. Now let's kind of get into it. So when I think about that, even before the beginning, what was God? Where was God? How did the universe come into being? And if you look at our physical universe, we have to start with what we know. Because when someone asks me, how can we understand God? I said, well, you start with what you're able to understand as a human being. You understand every aspect of that, and then you have to, in anything else, you have to get from divine revelation. So what do we know? We know about our physical universe. We know it's either infinite or finite. Well, it's finite. It's not infinite, because second law of thermodynamics is the entropy law, that over time, basically you lose heat, you lose energy. So if the universe was infinitely old, it would be infinitely cold, because all the energy would have dissipated over infinity. And plus, and scientists have all agreed the universe is finite, meaning it had a definitive beginning, meaning that at some point there was no universe and then it began. So how does it come into being? Well, there's, again, two options. It either came into being naturally or outside of what we know about nature. Well, we can eliminate it coming into being naturally, because we have the laws of nature. We have, again, the laws of thermodynamics. The first law of thermodynamics, in layman's terms, says that matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed. So the universe could not have come into existence on its own naturally, meaning it had to come into existence supernaturally. So there was a supernatural creation. And we know that the universe, the next thing we can use is the law of causality, which states that for every effect, there is a cause, and that cause is greater than and independent of the effect. The universe is an effect. Therefore, whatever caused the universe has to be greater than the universe and independent of it or outside of it. That's what we call transcendence. So we can know from human thought, no Bible or anything, that the universe was created. Whatever created the universe has to be greater than the universe and outside of the universe, and it has to be supernatural. It has to be outside of the natural laws. So that leads us to, what do we know that? So it can't be physical, because physical is the creation. So it also has to be immaterial. I guess we get to transcendence. So what do we know that is non-material, that can be the cause of creating something that is material? And I would say information. Information can bring about physical creation. And I give an example in one of my early videos. I think in like the second or third video I do in the Genesis series, where an example of the first farmer. Let's say before farming, you have hunter-gatherers. They would hunt animals, or they would gather whatever fruits or vegetables they happen to see in nature. Let's say one day this guy's on his route, going to hunt an animal for his family. He sees, the tree that he picks tomatoes off of. He's just a wild tomato plant. And he picks all the tomatoes off. Then one day he walks by and he sees that one of the tomatoes has fallen to the ground and was rotting. So he's not going to pick that one up. He just walks by it. Days go by. He sees the tomato disintegrates. Just some seeds are left. And as the days go by, the seeds get covered in dirt. Then it rains. Then he sees that a plant starts to come up. He's like, well, okay. Then as he keeps going by his route every day, that plant grows. It starts producing tomatoes. And he starts picking the tomatoes. He says, wait a minute. That's what happened, just unintentionally. What if I took tomatoes and took the seeds myself, and I put a bunch of these seeds in the ground and cover them and water them? I could have all the tomatoes I want. I don't need to go out and hunt and gather for them. I can make them myself. So he is the first farmer. What did he physically do? Nothing. He just observed information, and that information gave him the cause of creation. He was able to create his first garden of tomatoes. And so let's say he does that with other plants and vegetables. Now he has a whole orchard. Now he says, I've got all this stuff, more than I need. I'm going to hire some dudes. I'm going to hire like 10 guys and say, hey, hunter-gatherers, instead of going out there and maybe getting ripped apart by a bear or slept around by a moose or some shit like that, come to my area, pick all my vegetables for me. I'll let you keep 10% of them. You give the other 90% to me. So your family has, food. So now, first businessman, all based on information. But let's say they rise up and say, no, there's 10 of us and only one of you. We can beat you up and take your orchard from you. And if you don't give us a raise. Okay, do that. Fine. and I'll be screwed for a little while. But you know what I can do? I can take my information, find another plot of land, do it all over again. You guys don't have my information, so after this season of crops, you're done. So who's more powerful, the information or the people doing the physical labor? The guy with the information.
Yeah.
So information. So that all that little, I know it's a kind of a clumsy scenario, but it's just to demonstrate that information can be the cause of things being formed physically. And when you get into the actual physics of it, which I think we've talked about before when I've been on other episodes, and when you get into what the atom is made out of, and it's basically electricity and thoughts and consciousness, which maybe we'll get into that a little bit later on. But that information is what shapes those thoughts, and that's what it ends up creating our physical universe. So basically, my point is that the source is information. That's the first cause, but not just any information. Because again, the first cause has to have no precedent causes, because there's no infinite regression. Whatever caused the universe has to be a cause with no precedent causes. So do we know of anything that is causeless and can be the source of information? And I think the answer to that is principles. Principles are again, because principles aren't, I mean, causality is a principle. Thermodynamics, these are principles.
They just exist like ipso de facto. Right.
Yeah. And so when you get down to the two causeless principles, would be qualitative and quantitative. And the qualitative would be right, and quantitative would be justice. Right means something, it's binary. It's either right or it's not right. And right has to exist before something can be wrong. You have to know what's right. So right exists. And justice just says that things equal out. It's stasis, it's equivalence.
Man.
So, and again, I'm giving a short answer to you can go into Faith by Reason, I dive into it more. But so the creator of the universe has to be right and just, always and completely righteous and just.
Right. And then what does Jesus say? That he is the way, the truth, and truth is like, it's information, right? It's right information.
Yeah, exactly. Truth is actually it's facts that create. That's the definition of it. The full definition.
What's the definition of it? A facts that create.
Because if you say truth is facts, well, you can actually get around that. If you say like let's say a fact is, I think you're fat. That's a fact. I think that, but it's not true, because I can tell, Raven, you work out, so I can say I think you're fat, and that is factual, but it's not true. So truth is facts that actually create that are good, and the definition of good is that which creates.
And that we're talking about information creating, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be truth specifically. Exactly. Huh. Okay.
So that's pretty much the limit of what we can know about the creator through our human minds. Anything else we'd learn about it would have to come from the creator himself. So you have various sources of information that claim to know who the creator is or what the creator is. But we have to see if those information sources match what we know in our human minds from our human endeavors, what we were just talking about, our human understanding. So first of all, you have the secular point of view, which, the universe created itself, and then, Big Bang, trillions of beneficial accidents happening in a row, beneficial mutations, life coming from non-life. Well, none of that fits, because that's natural. And the first things we know, the creator was supernatural. We know the creator was transcendent, outside of the created universe. So we can eliminate the secular point of view. Then you have so that leaves us with all the religious points of view. And most of the religions have their creation narratives, have the God's creating the universe from within the universe. So we know that's incorrect, because we know that the creator of the universe had to be transcendent, had to be outside of the universe. So that leaves us with the basically I'll say 2.5 monotheistic religions: Judeo-Christianity and Islam. Well, they do have the creator as being supernatural, transcendent, and and again outside the universe and all that good stuff. But not only Judeo-Christianity presents their God as always and completely right and just. Islam does not. Islam in the Quran, Allah is capricious. He says he can do anything he wants. Allah can lie. Lying is not right or just.
That's interesting too, because a lot of the I guess pagan mythoses, right? When it comes to like Vedic belief systems,
Mhm.
for example, their gods are not transcendent. Their gods were birthed out of an event that
Mhm.
was outside of them. So
Yeah.
it's like the cosmic egg is one that they really lean on. And it's like the egg just pops up out of chaos, and then out of the egg is birthed like a mother deity, and then the rest of the pantheons are birthed from her. So yeah,
Right.
y'all don't even have transcendent gods. That's
No, neither
embarrassing.
did. Yeah, I mean, the Greek gods are the same way. The Egyptian gods are. They're all inside of the universe. They all presume that there's some physical stuff, be it chaos or just some kind of exotic matter. But it always starts with stuff pre-existing, and it can't
Right.
because infinity. There is no infinity. It is
Mhm.
not infinitely old. Again, second law of thermodynamics completely destroys that. Even when you get down to the secular, the latest secular point of view, which is the quantum theory that everything was at a singularity
Yeah.
with all the potential energy. Well, that still gives you the same problem. That potential energy would have eventually run out. You
That's
can't.
really that's actually very funny because it's the argument that they have, meaning these like, pagan belief systems are no better really than the Big Bang, in the sense that it's like, well, what created the egg? What came before the chaotic primordial waters? Like what? And they're like, it doesn't matter. I don't know, but I'll tell you what, my gods came at, and it's like if you go into the Big Bang, well, what set off the Big Bang? I don't know.
Yeah,
But God's not real, but I don't know.
when they have some very interesting theories, but there's no proof, which means it's faith.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, so one of the many reasons why I believe in the Bible, because the Bible is the only source of information we have that presents the Creator as everything that He has, all the criteria that needs to be met. Supernatural, transcendent, outside the universe, causeless, information, always and completely right and just.
Hmm.
Only the Bible does that. So that's why we can. That's one of the reasons why I believe we can believe it as that information source, because none of the other ones do that.
Yeah.
Why not? Like, why don't the other ones do that? Like, why not just copy this story? It's the story that's the most logical. Like, if I was going to make a fake religion, I would copy some of like these really important tenets, and they just don't do it for whatever reason.
Here's my opinion about that is who is behind every false religion. When you get to the very top, it's the fallen angels, the fallen Elohim.
Right.
They have a vested interest in not presenting themselves that way, because they will not live up to it. They're not always completely right and just. So they can't say that the Creator is always and completely right and just, because then you would say, wait a minute, you're not.
Right.
You guys do some unjust stuff. You want child sacrifices. The Greek gods were always banging each other and raping women
Yes.
and
That's
doing
what I was going
terrible
to say.
things.
It's like if you look at the other,
It's true.
belief systems, all the pantheons are like made up of assholes.
Right,
They're
basically,
not
worse than
really the
us.
greatest dudes at all.
And even if you get to, again, I'm not trying to crap over you if you're a Muslim. I mean, it's not my thing. You believe what you want to believe, but when I said that Allah is capricious, that's not me making that up. That is actually that's one of the 10. Muhammad himself said that he doesn't even know if he's would go to heaven, because Allah could just snatch the rug out from under him. I'm like, dude, if you're not going to Muslim heaven, who is? You're the freaking prophet.
Allah, the original rug puller. Unbelievable.
Wow, that's kind of crazy. Wasn't aware that that's what he said.
Yeah,
Right?
look, I mean, that's I'm paraphrasing, obviously. So you want to look that up, yeah. But he himself has a quote saying that even he's not sure if he's done it, because in Islam you get into paradise by doing more good than evil. You have to, your scales have to be unbalanced to good. So if you do more evil than good, then you're not going. If you do more good than evil, but how do you know? There's no meter. You're not like walking around and, okay, I'm above 50% today. You don't know.
It makes sense as to why they adhere so strictly to I think Ramadan is now where they have to do fasting, and this week we have a big fight.
So as an aside, my wife was talking to me about her friend. She said, "Yeah, my friend is she's doing the Ramadan fast." I'm like, "Really? When did she become a Muslim?" "Oh, she's not. She's trying to lose weight."
God. Oh no, there you go.
Wow.
There you go.
Anyway,
Well, that's a lot
go
of what fasting has become. It's now like a weight loss and a clarity tool, right? So like I'll use
like
intermittent
yoga, right?
fasting, and yeah, it's like yoga, right? So where Rogan's not telling you that you can, like, I don't know, sort of align your chakras and talk to entities. He's like, nah, it's just good for stretching. Do it.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, I'm all about the stretching. I think it's, but yeah, as long as you're not doing all the, all the prayer and all that kind of stuff, you got to be careful.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's, I mean, again, as another aside, because I was having a conversation with someone about this earlier this week about things like, manifesting by thinking positive thoughts and having an attitude of gratitude. And he asked me, do I think that's getting too close to paganism? And I'm like, no, here's the thing. Everything, all the lies of the evil ones, of Satan and fallen angels, there's always a kernel of truth to it, or you wouldn't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
They just take the truth and they corrupt it. So what you have to do is understand the truth. Having gratitude before you ask for something is biblical. But thinking that you can, snap your fingers and make something appear by doing certain rituals around it, well, that's when the corruption comes into play.
Yeah.
That's
And also gratitude is a way to kind of make it through this life without losing your mind.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I talk about this a lot. Like, I think complaining is the great commonality between one person and another. So a lot of people make the mistake of, like, whenever you hang out with somebody, it's time to bitch and moan. And you do that because somebody else always has something to bitch and moan about. Next thing you know, you're just that guy that shows up, bitches and moans, and everybody does it with you, or they avoid you like the plague. You can do the opposite. You can get really good at gratitude. You can get really good at appreciating your life and appreciating the people in it and appreciating the things that you have. And that is it's like anything, it's a muscle to work out. If you draw a lot, you get better. If you do that,
how dare you? How dare you call out David Icke like that? That's messed up.
Right. He's a bit of a negative Nancy right now. All right. He's a little bit of a whiner.
Be better.
Like it.
So, what's interesting is that now I'll end this whole this little rabbit trail on this. There's that the verse from in the Gospels where Jesus says, when you pray, ask for it as if you already have it, believing that you've already received it. And some people will say, "Oh, well, that's manifestation." Well, yeah, Jesus said that. He said, "When you pray."
Yeah.
He didn't say when you try to make it happen yourself.
Yeah.
But they can take that truth and then corrupt it and then come up with all these, courses on miracles and things like that. So, but that's not to say that you having a positive attitude won't make you healthier. I think it will. I think the opposite is true. If you're always negative, you're going to be sick.
Yeah.
So the Bible tells you, Paul says, dwell on good thoughts, things that are lovely, things that are holy, things that are of good report. Think on those things, meditate on those things. Why? Because it's going to make your brain healthier, which will make the rest of your body healthy. Yes. But just don't corrupt it. That's my whole stance on that.
Well, you know where it goes. The corruption is when you stop praying to God because God created all of this and has laid out some path for you and given you life. And instead you start thanking the universe, which is paganism, right? You're worshiping the creation, not the creator, and thereby engaging in paganism. And God's like, why are you thanking the thing that I made?
Exactly.
Yeah. Very strange.
Yeah. All right. So that's how I get to the point where I believe that the God of the Bible is the creator. So let's talk about what he is made of, quote unquote. And again, because we're human beings. We're in this material world. It's hard for us to think of something that's not material as having substance. So go to the epistle of John, the first epistle of John, verse 5, and it says that God is light and there is no darkness in him at all. So what does it mean? God is pure light, 100% light. What is light? In the most rudimentary sense, light is energy. So what existed before our physical universe was the ultimate infinite, for lack of a better term, energy through light. And that is the actual, if you want to call it a physical cause of create. That's where the energy to make the creation came from, because he is light. He's all light. And so that sounds okay. It's a little vague. What can we say about light? Well, this gets back to the first time I was on your show talking about the speed of light, and I related it to our consciousness, because our brains are electric. When you have a thought, there's electricity going on between your neural cells. That is light. That is our consciousness. So what is God? What is the creator? He is 100% consciousness, but he's all consciousness, all energy, all light. And that's where that's the means through which he can create our physical world. Because again, our physical world is less substantial than the spiritual realm. The spiritual, because energy is mostly hot. I got into an argument with a guy online. He says, well, no, you can have cold energy. I'm like, you're missing the point. The point is it's still radiating a form of energy. and generally energy is hot. Now, maybe you can talk about other types of energies that radiate cold, fine. But the Bible says, refers to this kind of energy as always as heat, as fire. When Moses asked God, can I see you? And God said, no, you can't. No man can see me and live, but I'll hide you in a cleft of a rock, and I'll pass by, and you can see the trail end of me. And what he saw was fire. He saw a burning lamp. So that fire is hot. We talked about how heaven is hot, will be hotter than hell because of that. That was the other rationale for that, because he has all the energy, all the light, all the heat. So that gets back to the angels. The angels are said to be fiery. They're made of fire. I talked about that in the series, the bonus episode I did on angels on the Patreon. They're made of light. The seraphim, which are one of the classes of angels, the serpentine ones, they're flying fiery serpents. So this is energy, and he used that energy of his consciousness to create everything. So first he created the heavens and the earth. He created a realm of energy, of that spiritual energy, that where the Elohim, where they manifested, where they exist, and he also created the physical realm. And when you get to the physical realm, and actually in the episode I'm going to be dropping either today or over the weekend on the next Genesis episode, I get into the physics of it, about how the atom on the fundamental level is mostly nothing. I mean, 99.9% of it is empty space. Right. The electron is circling around the nucleus of the atom at about a ratio of 100,000 to 1. I think I'm sure I gave this analogy before. If you were to take a pin and put a pinprick right at the 50-yard line of a football field, and have that be the nucleus of an atom, then the electrons would be circling through each end zone. That's crazy. How far away they go. If you were to make the nucleus of an atom the size of a baseball, the electrons would be circling at a diameter of 7 miles around that, mostly empty space. The electron doesn't have weight. Its weight is inferred by its movement. So that's also, and that's what makes the electromagnetic field, which gives us the illusion of solidity. Then when you get to the proton, which actually does have weight, but the proton is made up of quarks and leptons, and those are basically, they're vibrations. And so that's all we are. We're basically light and vibrations. What are vibrations? Right. Vibrations are words. I mean, ordered vibrations are words.
It's crazy that there's so many people that have just gotten smashed by cars, falling off buildings, punched in the face. And it's realistically, when you look at it, there's really not that much there, but there's so much of not much going on that it's oh, you just exploded into tiny pieces because there's so much of not much that just hit you. Damn.
Yeah, bro. Try telling somebody that the thing they just got hit with is 99% space, empty space, while their nose is broken. I kind of wanted to backtrack a little bit too. Yeah, and I keep making this connection between Jesus saying that he is the truth, and that even cartoons got it down. When somebody has a bright idea, what happens above their head? They get a little light bulb, right? Yeah. Or when you gain a piece of the truth, you are said to be what? You're illuminated, right? And so you're enlightened, you're illuminated. Yeah. So that correlation over and over again between true information itself, and also God being the truth, and it's just one big enclosed loop.
We just did a show with Brian of Demon Erasers, and he was showing us the Japanese written language. And when you break it down, it's very cool. I can't even remember all the details that were brought up in the show, but when you break it down, the symbols all, if they're describing it's they're describing man, and then giants, and then lowercase g gods.
Yes, yeah. I can almost show Ed. Hold on, wait. I could do it. Okay. So check this out. And this is more or less the symbol for man, right? More or less the symbol for man. This is the symbol for lowercase g God, right?
Okay.
And then this is the symbol for giants. So it's a combination of man and lowercase g gods creates. Dude, but honestly, the Japanese language is pretty cool.
It's all actually Christian, biblical. I think They were words for like redeeming, and it's like there's a lamb, then there's like flowing water, and when you
That was the
combine those
word
two
for
symbols,
righteousness.
yeah,
Wow.
dude, it's crazy. It's
Yeah, yeah.
crazy.
I heard
Very, very
something
cool.
similar about I'll call it, for lack of a better term, Paleo Chinese, that it's very similar in some cases to Hebrew in that, um the like the letter A, the aleph in Hebrew is, oh god, I'm gonna screw this up. Let me look at it. I'll talk about it next week. But
There
it
is
shows like
Japanese
you know,
characters are wild.
yeah, because some of them look like in Hebrew, there's one that looks like a house, one looks like a bull. You know what? Forget what I just said. I'm gonna completely screw this up because I haven't looked at this in years. But I'm gonna talk about it on the next show.
I
Um,
remember one of them was like the symbol for garden. And if you dissected it, it was like really wild the amount of biblical references that make up the symbol for garden
Yeah.
in Japanese. Very cool. Very cool. Like, it almost makes you feel like English sucks, but I mean, obviously we're superior, we're better, we're cooler, America's the best. But almost for a second, I get that feeling like this is a more efficient language. But then I remember that they're Japanese. So
Yeah, what I do remember in Hebrew is that the aleph, which is the first letter, looks like is like a house, and like the B or the Beth, it looks like it's like something for leader. So Ab, which means father, is like the leader of the house.
there you go. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you call that, Abba, father. So Ab means father,
And that's what's great is you have one character that like conveys so much. It's almost like symbolism in a way, because symbolism has that way that it conveys so much meaning in just a couple of symbols. And if you put one symbol next to another, it totally changes the meaning. It's kind of like that. Instead of individual characters, they've got one symbol that conveys a lot of meaning.
yeah, and symbols too. I mean, symbols, pictures, poetry, which is again we talked about before. The first chapter of Genesis is poetry. It's just packing a lot of information into a small packet. But a symbol is even smaller packet than poetry,
Hmm.
and that's why they're so important for both sides, for the good guys and the bad guys. And we all know there's symbolism everywhere in our world, from from the fallen angels and from Satan and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
We were talking about light. And that's when we get to the entity that we incorrectly call Lucifer. Lucifer is just the Latin translation of Halal ben Shakar. That's the Hebrew. Halal ben Shakar. Halal means light bearer. Ben means son of. Shakar means primary light. So Halal ben Shakar means light bearer, son of the primary light. The primary light being God. He's like so the entity we call Lucifer. It's a title. It's not even a name. He is the one who bears the light of God. He was the highest created angelic being, and his job was to bear God's light. And he was a worship leader. He was the chief musician, from what we are seeing in Ezekiel 28 and Isaiah 14. That was his job until he got too much pride and he fell, which we'll get into. We go to Genesis chapter 3. But my point is that they were basically doing transactions in light. It's all about light. It's all about heat, fire. And that's what these entities are made of. And that's why we can't be in their presence without, and live. That's why every time someone encountered an angel in their full form, they went into a coma.
That's interesting too, because in Islam they have jinn, and jinn are described as smokeless fire. We've even got a buddy of ours who has seen a thing or two, and one of the entities that he's seen pretty regularly is seemingly made of plasma. He's like blue, and he's kind of made of fire, sort of the way he described it. I interpreted it as like plasma, but he said it was like almost like fire that he was made out of. And so, yeah, whatever the hell they're made out of. He said blue in particular.
Okay.
And this was just one of like a few people that he encountered. I think he even may have talked to this guy about Jesus, and this guy was like, yeah, he's pretty cool. Like something to that effect. And this guy, I don't know what his occupation was, but he was sat in front of several monitors as if he was in some sort of a control station, and he was surprised to see our buddy. But yeah, he's run into him a few times before.
What I thought was interesting about that is that it shows that anything that's made of light that's not white means it's a derivative of it, because the purest light is white. White light contains all of the entire color spectrum. So which would mean that if God is the ultimate light, then that light would be just like completely bright white, and then anything else would be less, like blue, red, yellow. All the other colors are lesser forms of light. So when you read in of the book of Ezekiel, where again it's describing the fall of the entity we call Satan. It says, all these precious stones where you're covering, and it names all these different stones that have all these different colors. And I think it means two things. One is it looks like the breastplate of the Jewish high priest. The breastplate of the Jewish high priest would have all these different stones, these gemstones on it, which lets us know that this entity, Satan, Lucifer, was the high priest in the temple of God in the heavens. But these gems are also colored light. So he was bearing all the light of God. And as the high priest does, as a representative, you have all the different lights. You bear them because you're representing God. So that was the original fallen angel, Satan. That's his original job. He was bearing the light of God, all of the light.
It makes it much more significant too if you consider like the rainbow being God's promise essentially to not destroy the world by water.
Right.
And it's like, in one way you could be like, oh, he put pretty lights in the sky when it rains sometimes to remind us that he loves us. But it's really like, if light is what spiritual entities are made out of, then the presence of a rainbow becomes much more profound that way.
No, it's a good point.
Watered it down.
No, that's great. I'll mention that when I get to to that part of the Genesis series.
All right, there we go.
That's a good point.
So let's continue on then. Where are we going next?
Point. So that's really the physics per se of God, completely made of light, transcendent, supernatural, all those good things. And so in the beginning, he creates the heavens and the earth. He creates those two realms, the spiritual realm and the physical realm, which again is vibration. It's a hologram. That's what we live in. We basically live in a hard light hologram.
Yeah, and people call it like the holographic universe theory.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not really a theory if we're made of mostly light and space.
Yeah, it's a theory in secular science. I mean, the reason why it's a theory is because it's just hard to prove. Not say hard to prove, but it's just tough to wrap our minds around.
Yeah.
So because they don't have enough equations to really write it out mathematically, but through observation and through deductive reasoning, it's assumed that we live in a holographic universe. I mean, just like the Matrix. I mean, we literally are in the Matrix. That we, because in the, as you remember from the movie, they could interact. They could, if you got punched in the face, you would feel it, but it wasn't real. You could experience it, but you could also come out of it. And that's what happens when we die or are raptured. Then we'll come out of that and we'll be in the real world, which hopefully will look much better than the real world Neo came into in the Matrix. So that
I hope so. Yeah, because that was gross. Everything was wet and dirty.
Yeah, and gray.
Everything was wet and dirty and gray. Yeah.
So let's get back to the angels, which we started talking about last time. And I was talking about the different types of angels, and the top level ones were the cherubim, of which the Satan was one of them at the time when he was a light bearer, and he appeared to be over the seraphim, the fiery flying serpent, dragons. He's called the dragon throughout the Bible. So that's one class of angels that he was over. Then you have the other cherubim that look like ox or in men and lion and eagle. So that may be that they all represented different. So there's maybe a different class of angels that all look like birds, a different class of angels that all look like oxes. We see those quite a bit in artwork, ancient artwork. We'll see the people who these entities that have the bodies of bulls and like the heads of men. We see references to the bulls of Bashan being same as Mount Hermon, which is where the fallen angels descended during the events of Genesis chapter 6 with the Nephilim.
Mm-hmm. Look at the Egyptian pantheon, right? You have Horus. He's got the head of a bird.
Right, exactly. Which means these are probably the Nephilim descendants of these entities. So you have those guys. So the next level down from the cherubim, what I believe are God's council. So God has his council that surrounds his throne room, and they are, for lack of a better term, they're his court advisors. They're the people who he interacts with, who he makes decisions with, not because he needs them to make decisions, but for two reasons. One, God enjoys sharing his authority. We see throughout the Bible, he says, hey, you guys are in charge of this. I want to interact with you guys. I want to hang out. I don't want to be the boss. Remember, on the seventh day, God rested. meaning he seeks his activity as the first cause. And he said he gave it over to the rest. He says, if you want to look at some of the things that God, oh yeah, there we go. If you want to look at some of the things that God doesn't like to do very much, look at how much time he spends on them. He spends very little time on creation. He spends very little time on judgment. Creation, he was one and a half chapters in Genesis. The final judgment, the bowls of wrath done. He doesn't like doing that stuff. He spends most of his time building relationships, interacting. That's what God wants to do. He wants to.
It's like I tell my kid
that's
when I have to punish my
Yeah.
kid, I'm like, do you think I enjoy doing this? Like, I don't
hate
enjoy doing this. I want to have a good time, man. I want to hang out. I don't want to punish you and send you to your room because you're doing X, Y, and Z. Yeah, man, there you go.
Right. Let's say you build a treehouse for your kid. You want to get that done because you don't want to just build stuff. You want to play with your kid in the treehouse. So yeah, I'm sure God enjoyed creating, but he says, okay, I want to get this creation done so I can hang out with these guys. So I can show them, like, look at this beautiful world I made for you. Let's hang out in it. Let's have some fun in it. Let's talk. That's what he wants to do. He wants to turn that over. And so when you have the Council of 70, again, God likes sharing authority. And the other reason is, again, because he likes turning that over to other people and getting their input. Why wouldn't you? I mean, I'll ask my kids, where do you guys want to go on vacation this year? I'm going to make the final decision, but I want to hear from them. I think, what did my kids say? They said they want to go to, oh crap, my wife was just telling me. They want to go to Cabo.
Okay, yeah.
That's like, we want to go to Cabo. I'm like, why? Because all our friends in school have gone to Cabo. I'm like, okay, that wouldn't be the first place I would take a kid, but okay, we'll think about it.
Everybody on TikTok is on Cabo. That's what I see every time my wife is scrolling through TikTok. I'm just looking at all these people. And they ruin it, by the way, too. A little sidebar. It's like these people they highlight like a really cool place in a tropical location, and then by the time you get there, there's like 80,000 tourists there, and they're all taking selfies because they saw it on TikTok too. It's
right.
Tell them that they can't go to Cabo because TikTokers ruined it.
I will. There are other parts of Mexico that I'd much rather go to that are a little quieter, a little more authentic. Cabo is like little America to me. I'm like, I don't, I'll just go to Vegas if I want to do that crap. It's just it's Vegas by the sea. I'd rather go to some place I'm going to have some real good food, talk to some real people, and anyway. But the point is, getting off topic again, is that so God has a council of 70. We're going to talk about them again later on. But so that's the next level. Now they're not necessarily a race or class. They may be a mixture of the different types of the different classes of angels, but they have a high level position, and they're the ones who he interacts with. They're the ones we see in First Kings when they're talking about how Ahab needs to go out, how they need to take care of him, and God says, "Hey, Ahab's done. He's an evil king. Let's take him out." And he says, how should we do it? And of course, the angels start discussing it amongst each other. And one says, I'm going to be a lying spirit in the mouth of one of his prophets, and to lead him up to his doom. And God said, "Yep, good idea. Let's do that." So that's the next level. And then you have archangels. Who are the archangels? The archangels are basically they're the military. When you see the archangels depicted in the Bible and in extra biblical sources, they're always warriors. Now, there's only one who's in the Bible, in the canon of the Bible, who's definitively called an archangel, and that's Michael. There's a thought that Gabriel, who's the other angel who's named, we talked about this last week, that he doesn't name the angels because we would start worshiping them, because we worship them already, even though we don't only know two of their names. So there's a thought that Gabriel could also be an archangel, because if we see in Daniel, there's an angel who's fighting the prince of power of Persia, and has to fight the prince of the power of Greece. And some people say it's Gabriel, possibly. But if that's the case, then maybe he is an archangel. But Michael is the archangel that every time you see Michael in the Bible, he is a warrior on behalf of Israel. So there's possibly an archangel that's over all, that is the warrior that fights on behalf of all the nations. Maybe these are the ones who got put over the nations in after Babel, which we see in amplified in Deuteronomy 32, where he says, he divided the nations up according to the sons of God, Benaiah Elohim. But the archangels are warriors, and they appear to have a great deal of power, but they're lower than the cherubim. And we know that because in the book of Jude, we see the verse where it says that even when Michael, the archangel, was contesting with the devil, with the dragon, over the body of Moses, he did not bring a railing accusation against him, but he said, "The Lord rebuke you." So they were fighting, but he wasn't able to defeat Satan on his own without invoking God's name. So that would lead us to believe that the archangels were a level, at least a level below the cherubim, but they're warriors. Question is, why would God make warriors before there was war, unless he knew that there's a possibility of it happening?
Yeah, you're gonna need these people.
Typically. Oh, go ahead, Top. Sorry.
I see. Yeah, he's like, yeah, we're gonna need these people eventually.
And that checks out too, because typically in a society, the warrior class is beneath the priest class. So that there is a hierarchy, and typically it's, if we're talking about stripping the robes off the Nakash in the garden, and Justin Brown calls them priestly robes, and giving them to Adam instead, then it kind of opens the idea that there are a warrior class of angels potentially, and maybe there are sort of a priest class, for lack of a better term, of angels, and they would rank higher than them if it was anything like the way we structure our civilizations.
Exactly. And so that's why I am putting the archangels below the cherubim and also below the council. I'm not going to be dogmatic about that, but I'm just thinking about how they seem to interact in the Bible, and the council seems to have a really high level position. And then you have a group called the Watchers. Now, these appear to be, maybe they're on the same level as the archangels, or maybe below. So I just decided to make them next. I don't have anything definitive to say that they're a level below the archangels, but I'm just assuming, because we'll see that the Watchers were among the ones who fell. Am I frozen on your screen?
Yeah, if you give it a couple of seconds, it'll probably fix itself.
Okay.
What you can do is stop your camera and start it again. Oh wait,
there we go.
Like you're figuring it out. There you go. You're back. No big deal.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it for a second and see if I can get it back.
Yeah, sometimes they get a little goofy.
Right,
mine always tries to adjust for light and then freezes.
Okay.
I
also may have too many windows open.
That could be it too.
All right. I'm trying to see any other windows I can close. Should have done that earlier. Give me a second, guys.
It could actually just be internet connection. Yep, there it goes. You're kind of moving around regular. As soon as I said that, you start freezing. While you do that, though, I do want to kind of think about talk about.
Go ahead.
You're closing those. Okay. What the Watchers were relegated to do, it just seems like they were meant to observe, mankind for whatever reason. If that's all they were meant to do, because you look at the archangels, and it's clear like they're going around, they're fighting battles, they're going on missions. The Watchers, they just watched, and in that way, I could almost feel like they were more susceptible to falling and accepting worship than maybe a lot of other classes of angels were, because of the fact that like all they're tasked with is to observe, and if that is really all they're tasked with, then you're just sitting there looking at these things day in, day out, and your only interaction with them is watching. And then if one of them should be aware that you exist and start venerating you or worshiping you in some way, like, yeah, that's a break from the norm. Maybe that would be enough if your occupation isn't as adventurous as the archangels. Maybe that would be enough to cause you to fall.
That reminds me of with Jonathan telling us that story about him. I guess when he came in contact with what he described as Odin, right? Remember that?
Yeah.
So he was in charge of just watching the people, and at one point he goes to his overarching small G God, and he's like, "Hey, I don't want to watch anymore. I want to get involved." And that guy's like, "Hell yeah!" And then he like knights him to do that. So it's kind of like, yeah, if that was the same mistake that he made previously, I would understand why you'd want that tendency in one of your offspring, or someone taking up.
That was such a wild moment, because earlier on in that episode, he wanted to read tarot cards, and my dumb ass almost allowed him to do it before Top was like, probably don't do that. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. And then by the end of it, he's like, yeah, I did past life regressive hypnosis, and I was a watcher, and I was talking to Odin, and I was asking Odin if I could go down and incarnate in an avatar, so that the people would know that I'm real, because they don't know that I'm real anymore. They think that I'm an allegory, and so they've stopped praying to me. And this Odin character goes, yeah, dude, you can incarnate. And yeah, Top said he kind of like knights him and then sends him on his way. And then I find out that Azazel also was missing an eye. It was taken from him
Really?
as punishment,
Ah,
and that
huh.
he's responsible for the same things that Odin is when it comes to metallurgy, creating weapons of war,
Wow.
creating armor, or teaching rather people how to create weapons and create armor. And so I'm like, yeah, dog, you're just talking to
You know,
Azazel, and he's
w- when we get to chapter 6, I want to riff with you guys about that too, about who we think some of these, because again, we know that the fallen angels and the Nephilim were the figures of mythology. They were the gods and the demigods. And it's
right.
interesting trying to trace those back. Like you said, Azazel was, who are their real names?
Yeah.
We know that's the real name, but who are they? In as they're being worshipped. Is it Odin? Is it Ra?
Mm-hmm.
Is it Set? Also, how can we map them to the other so-called gods in the other cultures that seem to do the similar things? Like, you have Satan, who is, light, the light bearer, and some people relate him to the storm god Baal,
Mm.
who you can also relate to Zeus, who's also the god of lightning.
Right. Right.
Then you have
There's a
Ra, who was, the sun god. Interesting stuff.
there's somebody that you should talk to. I don't know if you have, but our boy Jules of the Great Pilled podcast. He's kind of a new up and comer in this space, but he does a really great job. He focuses a lot on tracking them from what would have been like their Sumerian titles to their Greek or their Mayan or what have you, and he does a great job of doing just that. Like, oh yeah, there's a lot of similarities between this character, and they're separated by oceans and time, but they have the exact same attributes. And so what he's doing is kind of, I think it would be great one day if he could ever come up with a physical representation of that, like a big map that we could look at
Chart.
to go, yeah, like a
Yeah.
family tree, but instead of tracking individual offspring, you're tracking one entity's, lineage, or not even lineage, just
Yeah,
presence and their name changes.
yeah, I'd love to talk to him. I'd love to be a guest on the show, or vice versa. We can talk about that, offline. But yeah, if you want to drop my name to him,
Oh yeah, you'd find his what he's doing very interesting. He does a great job of the Sumerian, like Enki and Enlil, and who they actually were, sort of thing. So yeah, we'll set that up. Gotta make it happen.
So back to the Watchers now that my camera seems to be working better after I had to close Photoshop. I looked at it, it was taking up a lot of
There you go.
memory. So so the Watchers, in addition to watching, that was pretty obvious in the job description. They weren't just watching like being spies. They were watching because they were put over certain aspects of creation. They were meant by watching. They were meant to be like like think of it like a watchman.
Mhm.
A watchman is someone who's like like your security guard is considered your watchman at night. What is he doing? He is over a certain area. He's protecting it. So
Right.
we'll see throughout the Bible that there are angels over different areas. We see in Revelation there's an angel over the sun. We see him during the bowls of wrath, when one of the bowls of wrath is the sun scorching men. And the angel, and it says, and the angel of the sun says, Lord, you are holy, so forth and so on. We know that there are angels over the wind. There are four angels that hold back the four winds of the earth. There's angel of the waters. So these are watchers. They are given task over creation. And when we get to the book of Job, after we have the introduction to who Job is and how he's a good guy and does all these religious things for God, it says that there came a day where the sons of God, the Banai Elohim, came to present themselves before Jehovah, and the Hasatan comes with them. But what are they doing? They're presenting themselves. They're giving a report on what's going on in the world. These are the watchers. So these watchers come before God and they say, and they're basically giving them their report. And of course, the Hasatan comes along with them to give his report. And we'll get into that. We get into Job, but that's the watchers. They are given a certain level of authority over creation. And they do, observe people. And in that observation, I think they saw the ones who decided to fall. They saw that, hey, you know what? If we have intercourse with women, we can make our own spiritual physical hybrids, which is the whole origin of the Nephilim. So that's not to say that all the watchers didn't fall, because we see later in the book of Daniel that there are still holy watchers, just like we know all the seraphim, even though they were reptilian, they didn't all fall with Satan. there's still some in heaven, but some of them obviously did fall. And so we
Would
will.
the watchers be, you said, principalities? What exact, because they're showing 9 types of angels here, but would they have a specific type of name?
Possibly, I think they might have been principalities. That's where I was going to go next. So yeah, thanks.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. You're going exactly where I wanted, I wanted us to end up, and that would be if you want to go to what is it? Ephesians 6:12, and these appear to be titles that the Apostle Paul gave to the spiritual evil, because he says, it starts off by saying, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. But let me know when you have it pulled up, or I can just start reading.
Yeah, here we go.
Okay. Verse 12. So we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rules of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. So these in the Greek are words like the wrestle not against the asousia, the porneo pneumonikai, the kosmokrauter. So these appear to be titles. But these are titles that appear to be reserved for the fallen one. So I don't know if there are holy angels who have some of these names. However, we do know that there are some angels that are called a prince. But I don't think that's a title. Why? Because the Archangel Michael is called a prince. He's called the Prince of Israel. In fact, in that same passage in Daniel chapter 10 that I talked about before, where there's the angel who has to fight against the prince of Persia. And he says, I was not able to overcome the prince of Persia until Michael, your prince, came to help me. So I think prince or principalities possibly means that they are the ones who are over the nations. The Babel incident, which we'll get into, when God divides the nations into 70, it appears he puts a principality or a prince over each one of those nations. So they are a level. Where they fall in the hierarchy, I'm not sure exactly. There's possibility that they were council members who fell when God put them over the nations, or maybe they are watchers.
That becomes it fits into the theme. And the theme is that every time I think I understand something, I find out that it's more of a title or an occupation, right?
Yeah.
So it's like when it comes to Lucifer, well, that's the morning star, that's the light bearer, right? When it comes to even Baal, right? Baal means Lord or King. When it comes to Satan, it means the adversary. And it seems like all these things are. So I guess where the negative connotation comes from in my mind is where it talks about how we struggle against powers and principalities. And that to me sounds like these are the things that are pitted against you. And so when you go, okay, there are angels that are put over these different places, they are the powers and principalities, and so that I do the connection of, well, fallen angels, but it's like, I guess they don't have to be fallen necessarily. It's a title, and
but some of the titles are specifically just for, like, principalities could be, I think, either or. I think the principalities were initially, they were, God put them over the nations to rule justly, but they didn't. So they just by de facto became evil principalities. But again, there's only one, as far as we know, one good principality, and that's Michael, who was put over the God's nation of Israel, and Michael never fell. But when you look at spiritual wickedness in high places, that's the term porneo pneumonikai. What's the first part of that? Porneo. So that's spiritual wickedness. That's talking about the wickedness of sexuality. So there are entities that are over that, the wickedness of porneo, of fornication, of illicit sex done as a part of illicit worship.
This is a fascinating point. I'd like to get some, get your idea on. Okay. But Doomsday Cracker says that Christ is called the morning star in Revelation, and so I'm an idiot. If I had to explain that, I would say that it's what we're seeing then in Lucifer, the morning star, the light bearer, given that he's a fallen, is an inversion of that title, because it seems to be what they do. But given my limited knowledge, that's about as far as that train of thought can take me. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So morning is the first light. Lucifer was a son of the first light, but so is Jesus. Jesus is unique. So you can call Jesus a morning star. When you call him so a star, again, is an idiom for the spiritual beings. You see in the book of Job, it says that we know when God laid the foundations of the earth, the Benai Elohim, the sons of God, shouted for joy, and the morning stars sang for joy. So again, using poetic language, morning star, sons of God means the same thing. So Jesus is also is the Son of God, but he is the unique. When he says the only begotten Son of God, he's in a unique position. He is the Son of God, but he is the unique one. So so it's accurate to call him a morning star, to call him a son of the first light. And Lucifer was also a son of the first light, but he was a different one, and he no longer bears that title. But again, it's a title.
Interesting. I've seen people go into this
because he's also Jesus is called the bright and morning star. So that also signifies him. The person who's just in the chat, it was correct to use that, but you have to use the full title. Jesus is called the bright and morning star. I mean, he has a different level of brightness, of light, while still being a son of God.
I wonder if that is, the passage from the Bible that gives rise to this idea where people start to go off about that Lucifer and Jesus are actually like siblings.
Right. Yeah, that's a part of Mormonism.
And
Mormons
again.
Yeah, but that has to do with their theology of, there's the pagan root of it is this balance, this yin and yang, which you also see in some Asian cultures, and that is the idea that you need light and darkness to balance each other out. You need good and evil to balance each other out. That's a big tenet in Buddhism, but that idea only benefits the darkness. See,
right.
Light doesn't need darkness. Darkness needs light. Good doesn't need evil. Evil needs good. Why? What is the definition of good? Good is that which creates. Evil is that which destroys. Good does not need evil to create. Evil can't destroy something that hasn't been created yet. So good has to create something for evil to tear down.
And what do you, sorry to interrupt, what do you think about their idea of the Heavenly Mother? This was an idea that was presented to us. We did an episode with some Mormons, the listeners of the show, and they presented us with that idea. And I was like, that's weird. It's interesting, but I don't know how much veracity I would give to that.
The idea of the Heavenly Mother is that the female, the human female, is able to birth life. That is what differentiates, among other things, differentiates the male role from the female role. So if you extrapolate that, then someone would say, well, if whatever force birthed our life, our physical life, must be female. Okay, yes and no, to the degree that God does not have a gender. We call God the Father not because he has a penis. God is called our Father because he has the role of a father. A father is the leader of the house. So that's why he's called Father. Whereas the mother is the one who is the nurturer, the creator. But God's not creating anymore. He stopped his creation, and when he initiated, the seventh day, when he started resting, he stopped being in that role. So yes, he did have the role of the one who creates life, but he does not do that anymore. So that's where that idea comes from. So no, there is no celestial mother unless you want to consider that to be God, but not because God is female, nor is he male in our physical sense. He has the role of father, which is a male role, which is why he always uses the male pronoun when he talks about himself. Again, not because he's a physical male, but because that's the role he has. Just like holy angels only present as male, because angels are servants. They're ministering spirits. The good ones are. So they only present as male because that's the role they have. That is the role of men. We're supposed to be servants. We're supposed to protect and provide and serve. The role of the female is to bring life and to nurture and to be relational, which is why we are all called, if you're Christians, you're called the bride of Christ. Well, I'm not a woman. How am I a bride? Because that's our role. Our role is a feminine role as compared to Jesus's masculine role. Jesus is the one who sacrificed himself. He's the one who serves. He's the one who ministers. He's the one who gives us causes. And I'm getting into stuff that we have to have John Lenhart back on to talk about the role of men and women. He does a great job of that. But the role of a male is to give causes. The role of the women is to take those causes and make effects from them.
I think there's a lot of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, but basically that's what we do. We're supposed if you're a good male, you're giving your woman the causes. You are protecting, you're providing, you are giving her safe space. And then she uses her beauty, the harmony, the nurturing, then she takes your causes and then she makes harmony with it.
Mm.
That's what we're supposed to do. God provided the causes. He gave us creation. Now we're supposed to make all the effects happen. That's what he told Adam and Eve. Go be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, make it whatever you want. Here are your causes. Your job is to make all the effects. And we're supposed to mirror that in our marriages. We give our wives the causes and let them make all the effects. Like I will, I was the one who put the down payment down on the house. I've been saving up. I have my investments and everything. I made, and so we use that to put our down payment on our house. My wife decorated the crap out of our house. It doesn't even look like a man lives here. I'm kidding. But in all seriousness, though, I don't want to do that. I wanted her to take that and she's the one who has pillows on everything. My God, why are there so many bloody pillows in my house?
So many pillows. I don't understand the pillow thing. Why do women? I appreciate the homemaking, but it just I look at it and I go, why I have one pillow? I'll use one pillow. I'll push all the pillows to the side. Why are we doing?
There's so many pillows on my couch. I can't even sit down on my couch. There's so many pillows. And
I can't stand
my boys and I, we fight with the pillows and we throw them at each other. My wife freaks out. I'm like, they're called throw pillows.
That's right. How about that? That's exactly why I don't. If you go over to Top's house, Top has like a big sectional with like all the pillows are essentially removable. I can't do that because I know as soon as I get that, that's what's going to happen. Me and my kid are going to be pillow fighting, and then 17 times a day, I'm going to be cleaning up pillows and putting them back on the sofa.
That's all I do.
Looks like
all I do.
I can't. That's why I won't do it. But you were talking about. Go ahead.
All right, so last story. Like when I was living in an apartment when my wife when we were dating. In my apartment, I was making decent money. I could afford. I had the most expensive black couch leather couch I could have. I had the most expensive TV. All my money went to my couch, my TV, my sound system, and stuff in my kitchen because I love to cook.
The important
everything else, I didn't care. There was nothing on my walls. It was total bachelor pad where all my money went into stereo system, big ass TV, big overpriced leather couch. And my wife came in. She had to, but she put all the beautiful stuff in the house. So that was my whole point about our roles. So to wrap up your question, that's why. So God is not female in the sense that he's not about effects. He's about causes. He gives us a cause.
Angels that you said something before. That's why righteous angels manifest as men. Is that what you said?
Yes, because the role of an angel, and this is in the Bible, angels are ministering spirits. Their job is to minister means to serve. And we've completely inverted that role. In our churches, we call the minister the leader. He's the head guy. Everyone's supposed to serve him. No, a true minister is supposed to serve others. That's the role of a pastor of a church. If you call yourself a minister of a church, then you are basically saying that your role is to serve others, not to be served. And I don't know, it's a huge thing in the Black community to have these. You go to church, you quasi worship the pastor, and they have a service, the pastor appreciation service. I kid you not. I went to so many of those as a kid where we would just talk great things about the pastor of the church. They would take up a collection to give this dude more money. And you're not a minister. You're supposed to be serving the rest of us.
That's a slippery slope. That's a very slippery slope.
But so angels always know because they're ministers. They're supposed to be servants. They're supposed to be about causes, not about effects.
So that idea that a righteous angel manifests as a male is interesting because Lucifer being associated with the morning star, which is also what Venus, the planet Venus, is associated with, and Ishtar is associated with that, and that planet Venus. And it seems that, I was talking to you about how Gray Pilled Podcast, Jules will do that. He'll try to figure out what are the original names and can you trace them through? Here's what the Sumerians called them, etc. And sometimes in that through line, you'll find that a female entity has the same characteristics or titles as what was previously a male entity. And I would say that certainly the fallen are not righteous angels. And so maybe they're just doing a bunch of that, taking advantage of that too, right? Because it does seem
they can present as female.
Yes, they'll present as female, and then you'll start to get what you're getting right now, which is the guy who retrieved the egg from the mountain range that we saw the UAP thing recently. He's talking about how as he's driving the helicopter, he is possessed seemingly by a spirit and it is a female spirit, and to him it is the spirit of God. That is how he interpreted it. Just in no masculine sense is what he said. And this whole like divine feminine thing, which is huge in the New Age movement,
Yeah, very.
is really being driven home right now in a bunch of different ways on the world stage. And to me, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense because we're in this binary, right? Male and female down here. Those are the only genders. And we look at things through that lens, but to try to attribute that to God would probably be short-sighted. You know, that would be uh, in our own limited understanding, but you could take advantage of that by
Right.
presenting as a female entity and being like, yeah, friggin', you know, the heavenly mother or whatever. And
Well,
that
yeah,
can,
we tend to want to anthropomorphize things that
yeah,
we don't understand because they make them into human beings. We put them, you know, what do you think of God? What do you think of a big guy with a big white beard because he's
yeah,
old? Of course not. God is light. He doesn't look like that. But when you talk about the divine female, that's what we talked about earlier about taking the truth and corrupting it. Is a female divine? Yes. So is a male. We're both divine because we are creations of God for that purpose. But so they take that truth that there is something divine about the female. The female can carry life and
hmm
birth life. So yes, of course, women are extraordinarily valuable, and God values women. And that's why He tells us that we're supposed to love our wives like we love our own bodies. We're supposed to give our lives for our wives. So there's no disrespect in the Bible for women. Just the opposite. Women are revered in the Bible. We're supposed to die for them. There's no greater reverence you can give someone than to be willing to die for them. Jesus died for His bride, us. So but when you take that and you try to make, well, it's a divine female, which means that this divine female is like God's partner. God had a wife that He birthed the universe with. No, now you're overdoing it. Now you're over anthropomorphizing God. Like, you know, the Mormons believe that God had sex with Mary, and that's how He birthed Jesus, like physical intercourse. That
yeah.
would have made Jesus a Nephilim. No, that is not what happened.
Mm.
So when you overdo it, when you try to humanize God to a degree that you put all these human attributes on Him, that's a
Yep.
problem because humanity is flawed. And if you try to make God too human, you start to put human flaws onto Him. This is like
hmm
when Oprah back, I don't think she ever was a Christian, but back in when she first came out, you know, I guess what late 80s or whatever, when she was first on her show,
Yeah.
when she first had her show, she said that she was no longer a Christian, that she grew up Christian, but she can no longer be a Christian because she saw the verse that said that God is a jealous God. And she said, well, I cannot worship someone who's jealous because jealousy is, you know, is a bad term. It is, you know, it's a negative emotion.
Mm.
Yeah, again, you're taking your human definition of jealousy and putting it on God. That does not mean that jealousy is aspects of insecurity. God is not insecure. Jealous means, I mean, it'd be more accurate to say He's zealous for it. I mean, He wants you, and he wants you to only worship Him. He is zealous for your worship. That's what He means. He doesn't want you to worship other gods, not because he's insecure and thinks those other gods are better than him. It's because no, it's harmful if you worship these other gods. So He's jealous for your worship. He covets it, not for His sake, for your sake. He doesn't want you to. He's jealous of you and you not worshiping other gods because it's going to harm you. He's doing it for your sake, not for His.
It's also wild for Oprah to take such a hard stance against God, but you know, perfectly willing to associate with John of God, who ended up being a human trafficker. It was
No.
one of the most, I'd say, the largest women's suffrage organization that she was associated with, and this
Mhm.
guy was claiming to be rescuing battered women, whatever the case may be. She blew him up, made him huge, gave him everything he ever needed to create a baby farming factory where he was just taking women and binding them against their will, impregnating them, and then selling children. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, big problem with God, the creator of the universe. Not a
Right.
big problem with John of God, though. He crushes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, Oprah, again, I misspoke. I don't want to, I can't judge her. Maybe she was a Christian at some point in her life. I cannot say she was never, maybe she was. She was raised in a church, but at some point she left it because she is clearly by her own words. She's more into the new age. She's more into,
Yes.
you know, all the secret and Eckhart Tolle and all that kind of stuff. So if she ever was a Christian, which she might have been, I don't know, but she, at this point, she evolved into, I think she left the faith by her own admission.
Well, maybe she was a Christian, but you drink a baby or two and it has a way of changing that.
Hey,
So.
you can sacrifice. You can make these deals with. You literally can. I mean, I know the Faustian bargain is a real thing,
Oh
and
yeah.
I think I know that I'm not. I'm preaching to the choir here, but you know that you can make these deals with these fallen entities, and they can make you fabulously wealthy and successful.
They give you the
But there's a
best talk
price.
show on cable television. They give you several mansions. They might even set Maui on fire so that you can come in there and buy up all the land on the cheap. I don't know what they do, but I'm just spitballing here.
Yeah, you look at,
Yeah.
I'm not going to name the celebrity. I guess I could, but there are plenty of celebrities that that are not that talented who make ridiculous amounts of money, and then you find out, you look at their work, and you see that all the signs of Satanism in there, that they've really given themselves over to it, and they say, you know what, I will trade my soul, I will trade my eternity to promote your stuff.
So you
Jay-Z,
ever listen
excuse me.
to
I don't think
listen to Bob Dylan? Bob Dylan is like, you listen to Bob Dylan, you're like, how did this happen? Why are you successful? You sound terrible. And then there's a interview with him where he's like, well, I sold my soul, because the guy's asking him, they're like, Bob Dylan, you're ancient. Why are you still touring? Why are you still waking up in the
Why are
morning
you
to
still
go and do
alive?
this thing? How are you still alive? And he's like, well, I made a deal. And the guy's like,
It was
okay.
what
He's
was
like,
it? I think it was 60 Minutes. Ed Bradley. I think it was Ed
Yep,
Bradley.
that's right.
Yeah.
Very famous interview. What did he say? I made a deal with the
chief commander
of this realm and a realm that you can't see.
Right.
I don't think there's really anybody at like these highest levels of Hollywood or entertainment or music or anything. Like maybe there's one guy, Chris Pratt, right? But I just don't. I like Chris Pratt too, but I just don't think you get there and are allowed to hold Christian beliefs or values. Yeah, that's a good point, David.
Star-Lord, dog.
I think that you make a deal and you get the earthly kingdom. That's like what they have to offer you.
Here is just my opinion. No fact, because I don't know. I know a couple of celebrities growing up, because growing up in LA, you're going to meet some event, here and there. Like, I was kind of cool with Urkel for a little while. He and I knew each other. We went to the same school. Anyway, but interesting guy, actually very, very smart guy. I mean, a very cool, down to earth kid, even though he plays this weirdo on this.
I've seen interviews with him. He seems very likable.
Yeah, cool kid. I say kid because he was I think he's like 7 years younger than me, something like that, thereabouts. Anyway, I think that a lot of them get into these deals, and a lot of these deals have like a lot of
it is exactly like Ed remembers them.
These the sexuality stuff, and that's why people get into the getting it after kids and getting into all these illicit stuff. So they have blackmail stuff on you, but you can get initiated against, I wouldn't say against your will, but you get initiated sexually. Yeah. And that's part of it. But then when we talk about the ones who are espouse Christianity later, I think a lot of them are trying to get out of it.
Oh, I believe that. Yeah.
And I mean, a good example of that is Justin Bieber.
Russell Brand.
I mean, it's come out that, P. Diddy, kind of initiated him.
Yeah.
And but he also he was espousing Christ for a long time. And I wonder if, I don't know for sure, I've never met Bieber, but I wonder if him and maybe some of the others who are espousing Christ so much are trying to get out of those deals.
I think so. Bieber was one of the worst when it came to everything that you suspect happens to young Hollywood, stars. Yeah. I feel horrified for him, because I used to make fun of him relentlessly when I was a kid, and now
I'm a believer. I like his music. I think he's super talented.
If you ever listen to the song, I think it's like Lonely, or I'm So Lonely, or something like that. Like, it's messed up, man. It was like he was only like 18 or something when he wrote that song, and it's just like a kid just on in the most fundamental way, just saying, I'm so alone and I have all these things, but I have no one. His mother essentially just gave him over to all these Hollywood elites, and they treat, I remember hearing Whoopi Goldberg, I think, when she was justifying the molestation of a 13-year-old girl by whatever director that was. I forget which director it was, but she's defending it, and she's saying there's no such thing as a child in Hollywood. And so if that's the meat grinder that he went through, I feel terrible. I remember seeing videos of Bieber in the club hanging out with NFL players, and when the camera came up on him, he was doing something with their belt buckles and he was bent over. And when he saw that camera, he like grabbed that camera, brought it into his face to,
Oh,
cut
I
off
heard about
everything else that you could
that.
see. And you could tell by looking in his eyes that this kid is inebriated in the club with adult men. So yeah, man, that kid is a real victim. And I spent a long time making fun of him, but it's a sad story.
Yeah, it really is. And I think we're going to talk about that more when we get to. I mean, we're probably going to spend a few episodes on Genesis chapter 6 because it's the origin of so much stuff. The obviously the Nephilim, but also secret societies and these deals that people make with the fallen angels for their knowledge, for their gifts, and for the things that they can give you, for the fame and fortune. And getting back to what we were talking about before about the female stuff. You talked about how the divine feminine is really big now. So is the Sophia, which is supposed to be the goddess of wisdom. You'll see that a lot. And the goddess Inanni, who is the goddess of female sexuality, and it's believed that this entity is the one that's over the porn industry, that this is the angel of pornography, Inanni.
That entity is also related to Ishtar, who's related to the UFO phenomenon, and I think that guy Tim, what's his name, Tim Constantine, that was on.
Yeah, Tim Constantine.
He was saying that she might represent the whore of Babylon as well, like like more of a principality that has come over to America or the West, like maybe the 50s to 70s, that kind of started this whole weird esoteric, what's his name, L. Ron Hubbard, Jack Parsons kind of stuff. Like once we started getting fascinated with outer space, this is where Inanni or Ishtar comes into play, and then you also get all the stuff that comes with it.
Yeah.
So we've kind of gotten into the dark hierarchy of angels, and so when the ones who fell, I think they may keep their title because they have a certain level of power. So they're not all the same levels. The cherubim are more powerful, I believe, than the watchers, and the archangels are a different level of power. But when you fall, when they fell, they still maintain the level of power. So if you are a principality, a fallen principality, then you have more power than, say, a rank and file messenger, angel, an angelos, malachim, and so they still have the same hierarchy. So I want to get to, because I know we're probably getting close to time now. I want to talk about, we'll discuss this more next time, is the rebellion and the civilization. So so God made all these. So the reason for bringing up these different types, these classes, races of angels, if you want to put it that way, is that why did God make them differently? Because he was making a civilization. They were his first shot at a civilization that was in the heavens and earth. Remember, God made the heavens and the earth, and they were over it, and they created a civilization that encompassed both. I guess they could freely go into the spiritual realm, into this material realm. So that's why I never get hung up on the age of the earth, because we don't know how long these entities were good before they rebelled. But there was a rebellion, because we see the results of it in the second verse. So this civilization, what was it like? Well, we don't know a ton about it. We have to infer a lot. But again, there was hierarchies. There were angels who were in charge of certain things. There were angels who were lower ranked, who had, I guess, lower ranking jobs, but they had a civilization that was apparently working for some unknown period of time. And maybe this explains why there are certain artifacts around the world that we can't explain, certain remnants of buildings, of structures on the earth and underwater. I mean, I'm really fascinated by a lot of these structures that we see underwater that just can't explain how they got there and how they were built. But
I see a lot of stuff like melted castles with tools stuck in the melted rock. Stuck in the melted rock. Like what?
Yeah, it's dragon stuff.
Dragons.
Do you think that God? So it's like he is. He's omnipotent, all knowing. But do you think that comes from being around for so long, or just like that out the box? Because if you created that angelic civilization, you created, and you're like, then after a while, you're like, man, I gave these guys eternal life. This shit doesn't work. And then you have to do it again. It's like from experience, you know what I mean? Or do you think that he's just knows everything?
That's a good question, because I don't know if I did this in one of my Q&As, or maybe it's one upcoming, about the idea, the omnis, that God is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent.
Mhm.
Only one of those is biblical, and that is being omnipresent, that he can interact with all of his creation at once. So he is everywhere at once. But the other two, all knowing and and omnipotent, they're not correct in our human definition, because in human definition, omnipotent means you can do anything. Well, God can't do anything. There are things he cannot do. It says in the Bible, God can't lie. God can't change. So, and that doesn't diminish God. What actually the correct term should be all powerful, meaning that he can do anything that is possible, but he can't do things that are impossible. For example, he can't make you love him, because that's impossible, because love is a choice. And if you make someone love you, then it's no longer a choice, meaning it's no longer love. And again, that does not diminish God. It actually makes him more real, because no one can do the impossible. God can't stop being God. When you have the silly thing that a lot of atheists will say, well, okay, if God can do anything, can he make a rock so heavy he can't lift it? No, because that's not possible. So again, it doesn't diminish him. It makes him more realistic. And all-knowing means that God knows everything that has happened and will happen. That's not true. He doesn't know everything that will happen. God has all the information that exists, meaning he doesn't have information that doesn't exist. My choices tomorrow don't exist yet. God doesn't know them. How can he? How can I have free will and God also know the choices that I haven't made a decision yet? But God can say a broad category about me because he knows my nature. He can say that tomorrow Ed's going to sin. He's right, I'm going to. He doesn't know exactly what the sin's going to be because I haven't made it yet. I have not made that choice yet. So he knows tendencies. So that's how he can know that man would fall, because man is not always a completely right and just. And if you're not always a completely right and just, eventually you're going to do something that is unrighteous or unjust. But man has a choice. His choice would be to always follow God. If you always follow God, then you won't be unrighteous or unjust. That's what Jesus did. Jesus said, I do nothing of my own. I only do what the Father tells me to do. That's why Jesus was incapable of sinning, even though he had a body of a male and he could have done. Jesus had a fist and he had an arm. He could have hauled off and just punched somebody in the face. Why didn't he? Because God would never tell him to do that. And he only did what God told him. When Adam and Eve were connected to God, they would not sin because they only did what God said. But once they decided to act outside of that, that's when they were able to sin. So with the angels, when he made them, angels are higher than us, but they're still not always completely right and just. So God knew that at some point there's a possibility they could screw up. I better make a warrior class in case that fight breaks out. But God's intention was that they stay with him, stay on his side. So he didn't know. I think he knew generally they're probably going to fall, but they have the opportunity not to. And I don't know when that's going to happen.
Interesting.
It's just like, so they're asking right now, like, how could prophecy be real? I'm thinking.
Go ahead.
I'm thinking because a lot of this prophecy about like the end times, it's talking about the actions of what these angels will do or what God will do in the end. So since they have no free will, he's probably able to predict what they're going to do.
You nailed it. God doesn't know what I'm going to do tomorrow, but he knows what he's going to do tomorrow. And if you look at prophecy is primarily God saying, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what the fallen angels have already said they're going to do. Now, as far as it comes to, and he knows our tendency. So he can say that everyone will worship the Antichrist because he knows that that's what we do. He knows that we are going to worship. Now, he doesn't know he will not say that, you know what, Top's going to worship the Antichrist. Raven's not. He doesn't know that. What he knows is that all humanity will, but all humanity won't, because some of them are going to be killed. He says that all men will take the mark of the beast except the ones who don't. And the ones who don't will be killed. So de facto they will, because the ones who don't take the mark of the beast will be killed. So everyone else who's alive at Armageddon will have taken the mark of the beast. So he can say that because he knows that the plan of the fallen angels is to kill anyone who does not take the mark by the end of the tribulation. So he can say what he's going to do in the future. He can say, that's why when he gave the prophecy of when Jesus would be born, he said, there'll be in Daniel chapter 9, when he says there'll be 70 weeks of years, 490 years from the time that, this declaration goes out until Messiah the Prince, so Mashiach Nagib, will be this many days, because he knew when he was going to do it. He knew it. Okay, 490 years from now is when I'm going to make sure that Jesus is born and lives his life. So he can predict what he's going to do. He can predict what the fallen angels are going to do, and he can predict the effects based on the causes. And he knows what our causes are. He knows our nature, and he can predict it. But notice that, God didn't set dates. Everybody else on the internet setting dates. The people on YouTube are all, the rapture is going to be next Tuesday. But God doesn't do that, because God doesn't know exactly when we're going to everything's going to be in place for the end times to begin, for the tribulation to begin. But he knows that eventually it's going to happen, because he knows that we're on a sliding scale, and eventually we're going to get to the point of no return. But I don't even think God knows exactly when that's going to happen. He knows the trends, and he knows that we know it's getting closer. But God didn't say it's going to happen on April 14th, 2028.
Huh. All right. Well, I mean, last time you were here, you showed us precedent for human beings surprising God. Mm-hmm. And so I think all these things do create a pretty compelling argument. But we are closing in now on the 2-hour mark, and we have another show in 10 minutes. So why don't we do this? We're going to be next time talking about Genesis 6, right? Is that what you said?
No, we're going to wrap up this, or the how the angelic civilization fell and what the results of that were, and how that leads us to, we're a ways away from Genesis 6.
Okay, yeah, all right,
like 6 chapters away, dude. We're talking about angelic civilizations. I'm looking forward to that, seeing how that's
chapter 1.
Yeah.
All right. So then for the audience, one more time, let's bring up where we can find and support Ed's work.
Oh, yeah. Here we go. Ed, take it away, man.
Yeah. So faithbyreason.net, that is where all my legacy stuff is. Like I said, get it while it's hot, because I'm going to start making some changes to it. Go to my Patreon and become a Patreon there. You're going to get, the first run of everything. When new content is released, it's released there first. You get bonus episodes that won't be on YouTube, because I try not to get banned. And you'll in my weekly Q&As. And if you level up, you are invited to be a part of the monthly Bible study, where we go through the entire Bible in 1 year from the supernatural, spiritual point of view. Notes go out every week to keep you going, keep you engaged. And yeah, that's where we're going. And I'm working on some written material, some books and things like that. So yeah, stay tuned for that kind of stuff. It's gonna keep building the empire.
All right, guys,
awesome, man.
Go and support Ed on faithbyreason.net. And until then, I guess we'll see you next Friday, right? We're going to set this up. We're going to do it again this coming Friday.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Top, anything else?
That's it, man. Perfect. Again, thank you, Ed, for spending more time with us. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We'll see you later. Don't forget to...
The greatest hypnotist on planet Earth is a oblong box in the corner of the room. It is constantly telling us what to believe is real. If you can persuade people that what they see with their eyes is what there is to see, you got them. Because they'll laugh in the face of an explanation that portrays the bigger picture of what's happening. And they have.